One of the challenges of being a leader has to do with the relationship of the people within your team. And it's really difficult to lead when people on your team don't see eye to eye, when they don't believe the same things, don't hold the same values, don't believe in the same principles, don't operate under the same standards. It's really hard when your organization doesn't have a set of standard core values or standard principles. We won't do these things in order to serve our customers, but we will do these things. One example of that would be under Herb Kelleher with Southwest Airlines. One of the things that he said early on is, I want to empower my employees to do right by the customer. And when he said that, it wasn't just words. That's why you can still today go to the Southwest Airlines counter, and if you need to change a flight, the person at the counter has the power to change that flight. They don't have to call any bureaucrats. They make a decision and they make it happen. Not so with other airlines. But it's one thing to have core values and principles in your organization that you stand for and that are consistent, that everyone can follow. And it's an entirely different thing to have contrived disagreements or contrived problems within there where nobody sees eye to eye, but it's not really an internal problem. I'm J Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast. And one of the things that I've seen more probably over the last 2 to 3 years than at any other time is this contrived disagreement. It's an accusation, if you will, that that group of people believes like this and that group of people believes like this. And if you got the two groups of people together to have a conversation, odds are they actually don't disagree nearly as much as you might think. Charles Barkley said it very clearly in a news commentator, to a news commentator just in the last 24 hours. If you haven't seen that, I recommend that you go find it. Just type in any search engine, Twitter, Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, doesn't matter. Type in Charles Barkley racism 2021 and see what kind of results you find. But the reality is we do struggle today in the world, and especially in America, with a lot of what I would call contrived disagreement, meaning we don't really disagree. We have a pretty good idea what our policies are, what our expectations are. Now, can you imagine running an organization when people outside the organization kept telling your employees, oh, you don't really believe like that. Your boss doesn't really believe like that. You don't really think that way. Well, it was called unions. But the idea that how we treat each other internally in America, inside a family, inside an organization, inside a group, whether it's a political party or a religious party or whatever. The people within that group should have the ability to determine whether I trust the other people in my group, whether or not the people in my group have actually shown me the respect, given me the space to make decisions and choices on my own. Or if I am not being given that space, I should have the opportunity, the right to discuss that with the people that I'm answering to, serving alongside. What we see today, though, is a whole lot of people who are outside the picture, throwing mud into the picture. They're not part of the organization. They're not part of the political party. They're not part of the church. They're not part of the family. They're not part of the organization, but they're throwing a lot of mud into the frame. They're causing a lot of contrived disagreement to make two people in an organization, in a family, in a group feel like, well, you can't get along because they're like that. Well, it's not true that they're like that, but if you point at that long enough, eventually you'll feel that way. Racism is one of those things. The idea of masking versus not masking is another one of those topics. The idea of do we need vaccines or no vaccines, that's another one of those ideas. Passports or no passports, that's another one of those ideas. ID to vote or not vote, that's another one of those ideas. Guns or no guns, that's another one of those ideas. But see, the bottom line is there are a whole lot of people outside the circle for whom the conversation has no bearing. It's none of their business. They're company leaders that are global companies that only do a portion of their business in the United States. There are government leaders from other governments, and it's not their say. It's none of their business what we decide here. Surely it'll impact them eventually, but what America decides for America is America's decision. That's why we vote. That's why we have a representative form republic. That's why we have the opportunity to speak our voice and say, I'm not on board with that idea. But contrived disagreement has divided the United States. We have a whole lot of arguments today that have very little merit aside from the argument itself. Now, there's a lot of vitriol, there's a lot of tension, there's a lot of problems around a problem that is a boogeyman of a problem. The problem doesn't really exist, just the argument about it. And that's a bigger problem. Because these contrived disagreements could destroy a family. Imagine it like this. Imagine if an employee of yours approached your spouse at work and said something like, what do I do the next time they put their hands on me? What do I do the next time they follow me into the bathroom? Now, that could be a completely contrived concept. It's never happened. They've never actually put their hands on you. They've never actually followed you into the bathroom. But simply the question itself is a contrived disagreement. It's causing a problem, friction, a problem now to be solved that doesn't exist in the first place. That's the kind of silliness that we're seeing from our media and from extraneous people and organizations outside the United States who are impacting our election laws. They're impacting the processes that we go through to validate our election laws. They're impacting the way we either wear a mask or don't wear a mask, or how many masks, or when we can take it off, or how long we have to keep it on, or how many variants there are. Many of these people who are speaking into these issues that impact daily American life are not Americans. They don't live here. They don't own land here. They weren't born and raised here. They're not citizens of any form, but they have an opinion, and so they're throwing mud into the picture frame, causing this divisiveness, contrived disagreements. So how do we as leaders overcome contrived disagreements? The answer is really simple, really simple. We have to talk openly to each other. And that may not mean through the form of social media, although that right now is what I have available. But we need to have conversations face to face. Leave your phone in the car, sit down at the park, and talk until you've resolved the issue, until you at least have a better understanding of the issue. Talk with as many people as you can on different sides of the aisle, different sides of the issue, different sides of the opinion, until you understand that you probably have more in common, more in agreement than you could possibly imagine, because the argument that you have, the disagreement that you have, is contrived. It's not real. And maybe you've seen two toddlers fighting over a popsicle, or two toddlers fighting over a toy, and both are yelling mine, not realizing, like the old man on the park bench, that the lady was eating his cookies, that his cookies were still in his briefcase. He was all upset that she was stealing his cookies, but they weren't his cookies to begin with, and she was the one sharing. That's the kind of contrived disagreement that we're seeing in our world today, and it's got to stop. It will only stop. It will only stop when leaders who have influence in circles of people step up, listen more closely, and speak into the conversation the truth about where we agree first, not where we disagree first. I'm J Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast for Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day. Subscribe now for our extensive video library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom.